Edwin K. Morris, and you are about to embark on the next Pioneer Knowledge Services Because You Need to Know, a digital resource for you to listen to folks share their experience and knowledge around the field of knowledge management and nonprofit work. If your company or organization would like to help us continue this mission and sponsor one of our shows, email byntk@pioneer-ks.org.
Hi, I'm Eileen Strungen-Gary. I live in Metro Atlanta in Georgia. Some things about me. My most fantastic job that I've ever had was working for Intercontinental Hotels Group, IHG, the big hotel company. Right now, I am currently looking for my next opportunity to impact and bring value to an organization. I've worked for 20 years in the field of knowledge management, research, competitive intelligence, and trends. I absolutely can talk your head off about classic films from the 1930s and 40s, and I love to travel, having been all around the world, including Singapore, Alaska, UK, China. So absolutely love getting out there and traveling.
In our discussions, we were talking a little bit about motivation and guidance of a young person and their motivation. You brought up something you'd seen in Ernst & Young, Personal Purpose Program. Can you tell me some details about what that is and how it affected you?
Sure. It enabled us to think about what the meaning of doing things was for each of us. And they started that program when I began. So I started in that personal purpose journey as soon as I started working for Ernst & Young. We were able to think about important events in our lives and what they meant to us. And through that, we developed a personal purpose statement and how it means, how we go through what we do on a day-to-day basis. And it wasn't purposely for work. It was your entire life and how you see things and what gets you up in the morning, what drives you, what motivates you.
So what was the big mystery? I mean, at that point, was there anything that was like, wow, I did not know that about myself?
Well, I had inclinations of what motivated me. And I think that doing some of the work where I was currently working, it already set me down that journey. I had an idea of where I was going with it.
Okay. And how long did that organization continue that process? Is that something that, let's just say, was it part of the onboarding process? Was it for everybody coming in, or did they execute it across the whole, everybody la-di-da-di, everybody's going to do this?
It was offered to people in the Americas regions. Yes, actually, it was almost an onboarding event because I went to a new manager program a couple of months after I started, and that was one of the main features of the program. So I was able to start that right when I started working at EY. It was great because the beginning of the program was actually in person. So there was that body language that went along with the discussions and seeing people and seeing their reactions to what you had written and what you were thinking.
So is it fair to say this was just your personal mission statement?
It can be determined to be that. It's what your purpose in your life is and what you do to meet that purpose. And if you're not living that purpose, how does that affect you? Or if you are living that purpose, does it make you happier? Do you get fulfillment from it?
I think there's a lot of opportunities in this type of program because you bring about an awareness that I don't think everybody has, especially in a young work life or starting out as a career. I'm going to guess that most folks don't hit that self-reflection point of self-awareness and what's important to them personally for some time. Did you see that there was any pushback from anyone in the organization about doing this self-awareness piece?
Oh, not at all. It was highly encouraged from top level down. They really put a lot of effort into this program, and it was, quote unquote, sold in different areas. You'd see it in the newsletters. People would be talking about it. Some people had it as their signature in their emails. So it was definitely very much promoted, encouraged that colleagues take advantage of this program.
Yeah. It was very visible then. I mean, there was a lot of visibility everywhere.
Absolutely. And it was a great program. I am so glad that I took part in it. And I have something tangible now out of that program.
Yeah, that's true. You got something that you can keep, and it probably still affects you today.
It does, because it has a lot of meaning, and I think about it often when I'm thinking about new roles that I'm looking at. Does this fulfill my personal purpose? Thinking about it as I do things with my family and talk to my daughter about different events and things that are going on.
So it sets up a parameter for you to operate from in a perspective that makes your judgments of, like you're saying, events or things, job opportunities, to see where they fit with your own personal bubble of belief and what your mission or purpose is.
Absolutely, It does that.
Yeah.
And it's something to look at and to think about as you go through these processes in this journey.
Well, you keep bringing up the journey. So let's talk about the work culture journey. This is really a foundational piece, what you just talked about, having this personal purpose. Let's talk about a work culture. How do you affect a work culture in order to get let's just take this for an example, to use something like the personal purpose program to help define individually what they can bring together collectively?
Sure. Would you like me to share the personal purpose that I have?
Sure.
Sure. Okay. This is what my personal purpose came out at the end of the program as. Living my personal purpose in everything I do, where every day I wake up to share knowledge so that others can experience the joy of learning and growing to positively impact humanity.
I like it.
Thank you. It has a lot of meaning.
You defined it from when your feet hit the ground in the morning. I mean, it's just like you're not messing around. This is the first thing I do.
It's what I have passion for.
Yeah, well put.
Thank you.
So how do you get that passion across a work culture?
In attitude, in programs, in speaking one-on-one or in large groups to colleagues. And it's just exuding this joy that I have in what I'm doing and bringing people into the fold, because it makes them want to do that as well.
In a work culture, how do you define that now that we're into the full-fledged hybrid gig economy of small parts that a lot of people play in different places versus the not that long ago concept where you had a full-time workforce all in the same location or somewhat? How does that affect a work culture now, do you think, with the new paradigm of how things are?
I think you can still have a lot of success in that type of environment. Remote work for me isn't anything new. And when I was at IHG, because it was a global company, I had impact across all of our global and regional offices. They all took part in everything. So for example, in the onboarding program, my team set up an onboarding process for new colleagues coming into the company where this program, the knowledge management program, was part of that onboarding process. So I would introduce during a new employee orientation. I'd come and make the introductions, tell them a little bit about the program, and then I would set up large group presentations that went further, did a deep dive into the program. this program was modeled for our other offices as well. So in our UK office, I had a direct report there who presented the same program to new colleagues there. For our China office, I actually got up in the middle of the night, went into our office. We had telepresence rooms back there and did new orientation for them via this telepresence room for their time zone.
Let me look. So, what program were you selling? A knowledge management program?
The knowledge management function,
Oh,
the function
okay.
that I had, that I managed and directed.
Got it.
And that included our platform. It included the resources, like, the Factivas of the world, the LexisNexis of the world, and all of the different resources that we had. We would do training for them. So during new employee orientation, they got a very brief overview telling them that we had this knowledge management function here and that we had all these resources that would help them do their day-to-day job. So information, competitive intelligence, we had information on trends, current events, news that was relevant to the business. So as soon as they stepped in the door, they knew that IHG, that they put an effort into making sure that new colleagues knew that this existed. For colleagues that were already in the business, we had different trainings that went on and people could sign up for them. So it was a comprehensive program that we had.
Who was your counterparts in the organization? I'm just curious, as far as at your level of the KM, were you on the same level as IT? Were you at the C-suite as far as command and control of all this? How were you nested?
We sat in the brands.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
We sat in the brands unit.
Okay.
The business unit. And within that, my team was also consumer insights. So with regard to the knowledge management function, I created the function for IHG. That was I didn't sit in the C-suite, but we had interaction with them. We had interaction with every level of the company, all the way up to the CEO.
That's a heavy position to be in, anything to do with the brands, right? Because that's where it all sits, I would think. How many brands were there?
Oh gosh. I wish I had the tagline right now, because while I was there, I was at IHG for 18 and a half years, and we acquired and created new brands while I was there.
Got it. Let's go back to this interactivity in addition to knowledge management. Was it basically a customer-facing business intelligence unit? I mean, were you, and maybe not customer-facing, but customer data, right?
Well, our customers were internal.
Oh.
So we supported the brands, sales team.
Okay.
Legal, IT, strategy. Strategy was a huge user of our products.
So it sounds like you had lots of people that liked what you had to offer.
They did. And we made quite an impact in the company.
What would be your recommendation to someone in the knowledge management field that does not quite have that reciprocity across their own organization? Sometimes KMers have to challenge the current status or the current paradigm in order to break some ice. What is the best approach, do you feel, for a knowledge management function in an organization that's just starting out?
To have a lot of contact with peers in other organizations. I did have a lot of peers that I was able to talk to if I needed any help, because I was the one who started the function at IHG. I didn't have anyone else to go to ask for advice. It was, do things, see if they work, and bring back really good success stories to stakeholders and to the leadership. Having a robust knowledge management program that has all of these different components makes such a big difference in the success of the employees who work there. For example, a piece of our knowledge management program were our secondary resources. And in one of the trainings that I did for one of these resources, somebody new had just started and they couldn't believe that we had that. Another person came in, looked at the training that we were giving, and literally turned to me and said, you just saved me hours of work. I just looked for this content a week ago, and it took me hours to find what you just showed me in 5 minutes.
So that's how you enable the workforce. And really, was that your primary mission as the KM?
Elaborate on the question a little bit.
Sure. What we've been talking about is all those things that help the workforce do their work with less hindrance and less cost and less time and all that sort of thing. But my curiosity is around your organization as a KM function for IHG. Was its mission to serve and reduce cost of the organization overall through the workforce, or what? I'm just curious what your focus was. And I know you had two main branches, one kind of a business intelligence kind of piece, and then KM in general. So
it was to save money. It was to provide intelligence. It was to lead to more efficiencies. It was to make people smarter in a way. I can give a great example of this. The platform that we had, we were able to implement external feed of our resources directly into the platform. So if you took, for example, the sales teams have accounts. And so we were able, based on different colleagues' accounts, create feeds of information flowing into the platform so that the user for a specific account could go into the platform, click on their account, and get a running list of all the content related to that specific account, so that when that person went out to sell hotels to different companies, the company that they were speaking to would often tell our colleague, our IHG employee, that they knew more about what was going on in their organization than they did.
That's awesome.
That was great feedback for us, knowing that we were being successful. And so it had many different facets to it. It served different purposes.
You just relabeled a concept. You transferred the idea of a smart city, because we use that anymore. In the last 20 years, you got smart cities, smart transportation, smart whatever. And now we've just created smart workforce because you're enabling, just a more customized user interface that actually adds value instead of confusion.
Yes.
Smart workforce, you're all over it.
Absolutely. And it did do that. I like to think that what we did and what we created took away angst, because people who don't know where things are and don't know things have angst. They don't know what they don't know. And our content was credible. It was vetted. It was unbiased because it came from different sources.
Well, I want to move on now. We've hammered how to make a smart workforce. So how do you revolutionize your digitization, your digital tech, all your tech?
That's a great question, because I saw our knowledge management program start off in an Access database.
Oof.
And that was uploading market research reports into this database. And within months to maybe a year, it was just obsolete already. And from that point, I was set out on a search for the next great technology. Because of limited resources, we went with a product called DSpace, which was a free digital archive system created by the universities, and we implemented it into our corporation, and we were able to upload multiple files in one record. We actually scanned our paper market research reports into digital files and uploaded that into the platform. And eventually we outgrew DSpace, and because of the success of the program, we did grow a budget. So we went out looking for the next platform. I discovered a product called Northern Lights Single Point. Northern Light has been around for decades and started out as a search company. And so we adopted this new product, Single Point. We branded it. We migrated all the content from DSpace into branded Single Point product. That is the technology that we started to use at IHG. And this was also the product that had the APIs that enabled you to feed your external resources directly into the platform. Northern Lights product also grew with technological advances as well. When I left IHG, we were getting into the machine learning piece of the product. This was just a great resource for the company.
Well, let's talk about the strategical decisions that were made in order to pick and choose what the technology was going to be. How does that happen, and who's in charge of that in an organization?
It depends on where your function sits. In my case, it was a group of people who had some demos done by some other companies. At the time, SharePoint was beginning to be the dominant archival system. And at the time, IHG was not a Microsoft shop. And so we didn't have Microsoft as part of the organizational technology. I guess we had to go in another direction. The Northern Light product just blew us out of the water. We were just so impressed with it. It was a smaller company, so we had direct access to their senior leadership in building out the product, direct working with a couple of people, the tech team on their side. We didn't have a lot of technology needs from our own internal team because of how the product sat in Northern Light, what the platform is, where it sat. We didn't have to bring a lot of technology in from our piece.
I'm trying to peel the onion here on the strategic piece, because I think there seems to be a lack of, I'll say, business intelligence in some organizations about picking the next slice of technology that they should jump into. And so I'm curious about the due diligence, what your recommendation is for an organization to really, you talked some about how the Microsoft platform didn't really fit because you weren't a SharePoint or a Microsoft customer to begin with, so that made that decision a little easier. But how do you keep up with technology changes?
Personally, I read a lot. I research what's going on. Again, I'm part of a couple of organizations, Special Libraries Association. I get feeds from KM World. And so I'm constantly looking out to see what's new and what's out there. And I revisit companies I've looked at prior to see what advances have been made, to see what the big, what the next big thing is.
Okay.
Because when you talk about technology, what I have found, especially in knowledge management, is that there are so many people trying to give you input about technology. And sometimes the technologist thinks that they have the best idea. Meanwhile, we in the expertise within the knowledge management function, we see things a little bit differently because we work within those platforms and we know what works, what doesn't work, what our customers are looking for. And a lot of times, IT or senior leaders think, oh, look, a new shiny object, and they want to take it and run with it before they know if it works. And it's really important to have that foundation in knowledge management to know what's out there and what is working and what's not working.
You bring up a kind of a consumer reports mentality in order to do all your research, but I don't think there is a consumer reports, so to speak, for this type of industry. I don't think. Is there a consumer reports? I mean, you're talking to trade magazines or trade resources.
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with what's been reviewed and, what the pros and cons of a certain product is.
Sure.
But there's a lot of talking to people that are already working within the platforms and
right.
my peers that are working right in it.
We've talked about shopping for new. How do you compare to old to kind of tamp down those cheerleaders of, hey, there's something shiny over here. We need this. To say, do we really need this? How do you evaluate what you've got and what you're not getting to what you could get with all the pain points of transition to something new?
Oh, again, that has to do with knowing who your customers are, what they're looking for, what their needs are, because a lot of times what you already have can be expanded. The capability is already there. You just might not already own that, and to talk to that. And I think that was one of the high points of going with Northern Light, because we had direct feeds into the CEO and their leadership. We were able to talk about what our needs are, and they were able to go out and try to fulfill those needs.
How much interface does that require with all your customers? I mean, that sounds like a heavy lift to continually pull in, and maybe not what's needed, but what's wanted. And I want to define that, because what's needed is sometimes not what's wanted, and vice versa. So how do you decipher about wants and needs in the development cycle of what you have and to what you don't have?
To go back to how we started out at IHG, when we were transitioning from DSpace to Northern Light, the in-between step for us was to hire a professional knowledge audit company. And we had consultants come in and talk to, it was probably over 100 stakeholders. And we did a comprehensive look at content that we had, the culture that was within IHG, technological thoughts, needs, what was working, what wasn't working. And we got a comprehensive report back, and that enabled us to go forward with a new strategy and build out this function. We knew what people were looking for and what their needs were. Everybody wants everything. And this new product tried to meet as many needs as possible. And, having the background already, just having the education piece, I knew what to look for, what questions to ask, the flexibility and capacity of what this new product was going to be. And I think that we were leaders in what we were doing, because we were probably one of the first companies. I know in the hospitality industry, we might have been standalone, but we were able to take our internal content, external content, and content that came with the product and integrate it all and became a one-stop shop for the company. And so that alone was moving us eons ahead of where we had been.
It sounds like the focal point of all your success was in that first deep dive and understanding of the culture, the needs, the technology that is and what's not. You really just set out a baseline total analysis of where you're at in order to predict where you needed to go. And I think a lot of organizations don't really take advantage of that effort.
No, and again, thinking back to when I started all of this, I've mentioned that I'm a consummate introvert, but I think having this personal purpose, even though it wasn't written down back then, I knew what the company needed, just instinct, because I had already been doing this, a fractured way, that I literally took my idea of creating this function and brought it to the leadership. I mean, I literally had a meeting with the person in charge of strategy and said, look, this is what I think we need. This is how we can do it. And instantly he just gave his approval. And
well, those introverts, they always get their way. Well,
we're the ones who really stop and think. I mean, we put our ideas in our head to put it down in paper.
So what are you saying? Extroverts just fly off the seat of their pants? Is that what you're saying? Is that?
No, I'm not saying that either.
Okay. I say that because I am one. So. All right. Well, so let's go to your personal definition of what you think knowledge management is.
Knowledge management, to me, I've recently, when we go out interviewing for new positions, that's one of the key questions. And for me, knowledge management is the capture and processing of knowledge that the company possesses or is in hand of, and sharing that out in a methodical way. It's more than the technology. I like the focus on the culture piece because I love having that impact on the people I work with and knowing that I've helped them achieve their goals and answer their questions.
So you're a person of the people.
I think so. I want to impact their learning journey. I want to make sure that they have the right information when they need it, because they need to be able to do their jobs also.
Well, you're bringing in the learning aspect. I think a lot of knowledge management misses that mark, is that they don't think of the culture or their client, the user, the receiver of the information or knowledge data. They don't think of them as learners. And I think that's the key ingredient to a good KM and ecosystem, is to have that learning be the main thrust of why you're all here. You know, to be able to learn and become better or more proficient, but to learn and evolve.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we did each year, my team created a report called The State of Knowledge Management at IHG.
Oh.
And we would share all the important metrics. We would share success stories. We would interview our stakeholders and ask them for input into what this program meant to them. We would do a big infographic, and then we'd blow it up and hang it outside of our cubicle so that anybody walking by would see the impact that we were having on the company.
Well, that's pretty good evidence to have hanging around for your ROI.
One of the pieces of ROI that we studied was some of our external content. We would go in and do a dollar for dollar value basis on what the price of the report is, how many times it was downloaded, how it was used, and brought back the ROI and what we were paying for the subscription and how the subscription was being used. And sometimes we would find that there was 1,000% return on investment based on the price of the report and how many downloads it had.
Well, that brings up a great point to end on, is that an organization has to always be thinking about, here, let's go back to the smart workforce, is to create a smart learning environment in order to enable knowledge sharing and development across the enterprise. And it's really that simple. And if we could get everybody on board with that, that'd be super.
It would be. It would be, because that learning aspect is so important to have it ingrained into the corporate DNA, that it's important, that it's not an afterthought, because knowledge management makes smart employees, makes smart organizations. A robust knowledge management program gives a company a competitive edge. It's that simple.
It is that simple, and I'm glad we're seeing eye to eye on that one. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, thanks for being here today, Eileen. It was quite enjoyable. Let's do it again.
Thank you. Absolutely. I'd love to.
Just finished our latest Because You Need to Know, a public service of Pioneer Knowledge Services. Please join us on LinkedIn and find us at pioneer-ks.org. If your company or organization would like to help us continue this mission and sponsor one of our shows, email byntk@pioneer-ks.org.